You guys have no questions? You guys are that certain?
I have kind of a weird one.
Okay, I like weird questions.
Sure. So when you're designing, how do you break out of like, so you know when you're drawing and you kind of tend to draw the same shapes
Sure.
over time? Like you fall into like specific, not you specifically, but just like the general you. Um, like how do you break out of doing like predictable patterns and
Uh-huh.
how do you break out of that and make things a bit more interesting, I guess?
How do you think? I'm asking. It's not rhetorical.
I have
It's
no
not
idea.
rhetorical. Try.
I mean,
Guess.
I personally, I try to like turn my brain off for a while, but it's still, it's kind of like handwriting, you know, it still shows through.
Okay, so if that doesn't work, what else should you try?
Um, Something that randomizes it. I don't know.
Okay, what do you mean?
Uh,
Elaborate on that. What do you mean by randomizing?
okay, so say the program like Alchemy,
Okay.
but that still kind of has that same alchemy-ish look, right?
Uh-huh.
Um,
What else do you think you could do?
Look for random patterns in other things, like
Great.
natural references.
Okay.
Uh,
Start there.
okay.
Um, I'm not trying to troll. I'm doing the thing again. I did. I
No,
believe
I
it was
get it.
Pete. It's the whole I'm teaching you how to fish. Okay.
Okay.
I'm vegan, so it's more like teaching you how to plant some potatoes. Okay. Give a person a potato, you feed him for a day. Teach a person how to make potatoes or grow potatoes. You feed them for a lifetime, and they might have the opportunity to become potato salesmen. Um, so you're right. Your suspicions are correct. Okay.
Mhm.
So, so kind of what's the point? What's the lesson I'm trying to make a point of? A lot of times, it's not so much about what it is you need to do. It's just about getting started. And I generally find that most people have a good sense of what they need to kind of do to get started. What they're afraid of is that perhaps it's the wrong way, right? And or maybe the ways that they go about it is not the best, or the things that they've tried haven't worked, and they just are lost. And I understand that concept because I was there many many times. But the thing that I did, because I didn't necessarily have um, as much access as you guys have to information, you know, but I'm still alive, so I now have access to all this information. It's amazing. Okay. I'm still relatively young, so I'm like quite aware of the advances of technology too, stay relevant. So what I've discovered is that focus is what's really starting to get people. People just don't focus in, laser focus. Because if all I've done right now for you and some of the people in this class is just demonstrate what focus looks like, right? Because I asked you, like, well, how, or what, or why, or what do you think? I just kept on asking, and then eventually you alone, came up with a solution. Find random patterns in nature, right?
Yeah.
And I said, sure, because here's the thing: what made me uh, as good as I am today is just that. I just kept asking questions. But the difference between potentially you and I at this moment, the real difference is why I'm here teaching you and why you haven't gotten there yet, is that when I asked the question, I then came up with an answer, you know?
Hmm.
And it didn't matter if I was wrong. You see the difference there?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times students are afraid to be wrong. I wasn't afraid of being wrong. And if you look at scientists, that's basically the scientific method. They do a lot of research, and then they say, hey, there's a phenomenon in the, oh, I'm sorry, they start with, hey, there's a phenomenon in the universe. How does that work? So then they do research to just double check that there's no one else that's already kind of unraveled this answer. Okay? And sometimes there is. Sometimes there isn't. Okay? And based off of what they find, then they come up with the hypothesis. Okay? Which is basically an educated guess. You understand that?
Yeah.
But it doesn't end there. That's the part that I'm trying to say is like you haven't even gotten to a hypothesis yet until just now. All right? I made you formulate an hypothesis. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So now what did they do? How does the scientific method move from here? Do you know? It's okay if you
Test
don't
it.
know. Huh?
You
Yeah,
test
test it.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, if we
Okay.
keep it real simple, you just test it. So that is something you, like if I were to ask you, how often have you truly spent time studying the random shapes in nature? Like how often? Give me hours, weeks, days, years. Like how much time have you spent?
Not very.
Nothing?
Not very much.
Not very much. Okay.
It's cold. I don't go outside here.
Well, luckily for you, you have the internet. You don't have to go outside anytime, ever. You can just look online, right?
Exactly.
Remember, like I was saying earlier, just don't find reasons why you can't. I know you're just making a joke, but it's just. But my point is that, um, like the part that the it's one thing to just get people to convince them to understand, to ask questions. It's great, but also come up with their own answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to get people to do that, and that's actually not too difficult either. I can almost always do it every time, like right in class live. I can have you formulate your own hypothesis, you know, without me doing anything, without me saying or suggesting anything to you, you know? And generally, almost every time, people will have some hypothesis that is um, foundationally useful, okay? Like what you said was useful, okay? It's a good
Okay.
start.
Cool.
But the next point is you now have to test that hypothesis. You understand me?
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I unfortunately cannot do for people. Okay? I can't paint for you, right? I can't study these things for you. And I can't even promise a thing that if you eat this juice or drink this juice and eat this pill, you're now going to be able to do the thing, you know? I can't do this type of stuff, right? And if I could, then I would be charging way more, right? If I can say, if you do this, you're going to be a badass for sure. Like, and I mean like tomorrow.
You gotta be a vegan first.
Yeah, you got to start a vegan. That's the solution. um, no, like my point is that like this is where I start to say, okay, there's a difference between um, knowledge and practice. Like knowledge allows you to understand how to get to those solutions. This is what I do for you guys a lot of the time. So pretty much all I can do for you, right, is provide knowledge, you know? But what
Mm-hmm.
you guys have to do is what I can't provide for you is the actual work. And when people say you just got to work hard, it's a very generic sentiment of advice. Working hard is just default. Okay, like, and I don't mean hard work like you got to spend 10 hours a day, you know, every day for a year. I mean hard work just means that it isn't easy. Meaning that when you try to draw something and it doesn't turn out the way you like, that is, in my vocabulary, hard. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Hard to overcome. But it doesn't mean you have to spend 10 hours to overcome it in one day. You could take your time with it, and eventually you will overcome it. In fact, I've discovered that you only really need to spend 15 to 30 hours a week to generally get good at anything. And if you do that for years, you become an expert, if not a master at it, depending on how many more years you devote to it. right? And so what I'm getting at is that, like, now let's say you know how to do, like I taught you, if you do several push-ups, you're going to get stronger at push-ups, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now you have to go do the push-ups. You get me? Okay, so that is me, teaching you how to farm for potatoes. Okay, but I also like to give you the potato. Okay, but you have to
Mm-hmm.
earn it, and you earned it. You listened to me, and you came up with your own answers. So what do? You did what you did. You come up with an answer, right? And you just practice it. Now, how do you go about practicing it? You should quantify it. You have to have a way of testing if you've learned anything. Okay, and so what I usually do is have people practice those types of things that you're saying you want to get better at before they do studies, right? That's called a controlled experiment. It's like having something that is a little bit different, like you haven't done anything yet, okay? And then once you've done that, then you go ahead and start practicing and studying and doing, and that experiment, by the way, the test that you do in the beginning should have a time limit to it, so that way it's also quantifiable, right? Say you give yourself an hour to try to paint something and try to come up with your own shapes and designs like you're struggling with, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, you're going to yield results that you're not going to like. That's the point. You want to kind of compare it. And so then when you go and practice and study and learn, hopefully new things, and then you test it, let's say at the end of the week, again, just to see if there's any progress, right? Then you'll have a more objective results, because if you spend another hour a week after what you've believed was studies, right? And you don't see any real increase of results. So that gives you an answer that perhaps the way that you're studying or practicing isn't working, right? So do you give
Mm-hmm.
up and quit concept art forever? No. You just do the same thing. You just say, okay, let me do some more research. Now let me come up with another educated guess, another hypothesis, right? But now it's going to be even more educated, right? Because you have more results to work with, you know? And then you test that, and then just keep doing that. That's how scientists put uh, robots on Mars. You understand me?
Mm-hmm.
They've never put a robot on Mars before they put the first robot on Mars. So they had to experiment without even using the real thing. You get it? But they did small steps, baby steps into that. They got satellites to get into space. They landed people on the moon, and then they got crafts to orbit around Mars, you know, et cetera, until eventually they feel confident enough to put robots on Mars, and now they feel confident enough to put people onto Mars. In fact, they felt confident enough about this for decades. It's just they don't have enough money, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
challenge isn't so much about putting people on Mars. The challenge is putting people on Mars alive, okay? And it's because space is super dangerous for human life in so many ways that you wouldn't even think about, right? And it's because they constantly think about these things, you know? They're constantly reworking their results and the things that they think they know. You understand me? And if you apply the
Yep.
same application to the same methodology to art, uh, you'll yield very amazing results. The scientific method is one of the greatest inventions that humans have made in a long time. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
like it's a process and an invention, and it just works, and it works even for art. Okay, and here's
Yeah,
the
I always
thing.
felt kind of like people. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. What you said?
Oh, I was gonna say I always feel like for atheist people are like, yeah, just like break out of that, just like experiment, but it's hard to know where to start with that, and having a structure for it is a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully you see the kind of the point I'm trying to say. Like, yes, it's hard to
Yeah,
start,
yeah.
right? But I'm trying to say that's the biggest problem. It's not so much what and where and the things that you begin with. It's just beginning in general that I'm trying to say. Just start doing it, you know? Because like let me demonstrate. Like there is this idea that if you start, like if you do all these things, like you learn all these things that I've talked about, but then if you learn things that are negative, right, things that you feel like are like, I can't believe I practiced that for so long. What a bad thing, like these bad habits that I've acquired, perhaps, right? And you have like this thing where you keep adding new, but then also bad things. The way that people might think of this is that, or like intuitively they think, I've got four, or I'm sorry, six out of 10 things correct, you know?
Mm.
And I'm trying to say this is the wrong way of thinking about it. You just know 10 things. You understand? It's not 6 out
Mm.
of 10 because you did four things bad. No, you just know 10 things, which is an additive way of thinking about it. Because it's not just about knowing what to do. It's also knowing what not to do. You get it?
Yeah.
It all compounds. It all adds up. It doesn't go backwards. If you did a process wrong for years, that will teach you something. You'd be like, did something wrong for years, you know? And your mentality will be shaped much more round. It'll be more rounded, okay? Because of that. No one who is tremendously successful in this industry or in this world in general, tremendously successful, and that word is very, very relative. But anyone who's tremendously successful had made tremendous amounts of mistakes. Okay? That is just a fact. All right? There is nobody, and if there is, those are very rare. Okay? If there's someone out there that's like never made a mistake in their life and they just completely, just all they do is literally win. Okay? Like that is very, very,
Um,
very, very rare. Okay? And you have to,
Hi.
like, what,
Could,
what happened?
sorry. I have a question as well, but sorry, go on.
Okay. Yeah, it's very, very rare. Like everybody who's tremendously successful is has failed, made lots of failures in their career or in their lives in some capacity, you know? And you have to understand that and embrace that truly to start to get to your level of amazingness that you're destined to have if you just keep it up. Okay. And I think you understand this concept. I don't think it's any new information to you. And what I find is that I don't necessarily reveal too much new information, right? I just make it really relatable and indisputable usually, right? So that if there was any confusion before, there should be very limited confusion. That the simple way to the success is just tremendous practice and tremendous amounts of knowledge gathering. Skill and knowledge are like the two things you need to put time into. And then patience and resilience are like the greatest talent tree points you should put in. If our life is an RPG and you had talent points to put into, like skill trees, put them into patience and resilience. And yeah, the scientific method is all about making mistakes. Okay, it's all about saying that there's an opportunity that I could be wrong or you could be wrong. You know, and with that wrongness comes new hypotheses and new research and insight. And you just keep it up, and you'll next thing you know, you're going to be a badass, and you'll be able to explain why you're a badass to many other people like I can't. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, what was the question? Was that Natalie? That's a good ask question.
Yeah.
Ukulele girl.
Um, I was wondering, like, how do you know, I guess it's like a really, I don't know, how do you know whether critique kind of works for you, um, and when it doesn't, like, and like whether it's purposely helpful, and I don't know, because I'm a university student,
Okay.
and sometimes I feel like some of the things that um, that have been kind of said haven't exactly been helpful to me, but I'm not really sure whether that's just like, I don't know, how do you filter what's going to be useful, and how do you know, I don't know, whether it's just
I
like a
got
general like,
you don't have to explain. I think I get where you're going with this. Um, so basically, we'll just funnel this to the idea of like, how do you, if when someone gives you a critique, um, there might be opportunities of contradiction. There might be opportunities of resilience on your end, and how do you kind of sit there and say, okay, what is good and what is bad? And the best way to think about this, I'm going to give you a tool to think about criticism, is that you should take every criticism seriously. Okay, except for personal attacks. All right. If someone personally attacks you, that's a little bit different. It's not criticism. That's just malice, right? But if the person that critiques you is not critically attacking you, right? Then you should take it seriously. Okay. But does taking it seriously mean you should do it exactly as they suggested? If someone comes to you, Natalie, and says you should draw only environments, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess I just only draw environments now. Like that is not taking it seriously. That is taking it literally. You know?
yeah,
But when taking it seriously, say, okay, why did someone suggest that I should do that? It's not that I don't think they're trying to personally kill me or anything. I think they just have a criticism. You know, I want to be a character artist, but yet they've told me that I need variety in my portfolio. Okay? And I came to that same conclusion where I started thinking, I was like, well, why do people keep telling me that I need variety in my portfolio? I want to be a character concept artist. I see plenty of them, people that just focus on character concept art, you know? And they get jobs just doing character concept art. I'm like, it's totally possible that I can do that, right? Why do these people keep on saying? And I listen, and they're like, well, it's to get you better opportunities. And I said, well, the opportunities that I want to have are a character. So how will that help me get those opportunities? I keep asking these selves internally, and I would do some environment stuff here and there, and I would do whatever. I would flip and flop all the time, because I wasn't taking the feedback so seriously. That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay.
okay,
And then what ended up happening was that I started to pay attention to like why people were saying this, and I just took it very seriously as okay, there must be a reason, there must be a cause and effect, right?
mm-hmm.
And I started to discover that the reason why people were criticizing me in such a way was because I sucked. I was not a very good character concept artist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nicer to just tell me to diversify my portfolio. It's nicer to tell me that I need to just have less of this or more of that. It's nicer to just tell me this piece of advice versus this piece of advice. You hear me?
Yeah,
It's harder to just say, the reason why your portfolio isn't good because you just don't have good character concept art. This is why you're not going to get a job in the industry. It's because you're not very good at it. Right?
yeah,
And that's true for most students. And what I do when I critique portfolios is I make it very clear to them why they can't get jobs, okay? But I do it in a way that doesn't crush their dreams and souls. There's some artists out there that do that. They'll just totally crush. And I am more supportive of the truth, even if it's a hard truth. But I also think that you don't need to be so hard, okay? There's a compassionate way and a more empathetic way of giving feedback to people that is truthful and helpful, you know?
yeah,
and and so getting to my point, so that you'll have this happen, man. You'll go to like an event and you show your portfolio, and people from every walk of life will tell you something completely contradicting to the last person that you talk to. Okay,
um,
and
okay,
so whenever someone gives you feedback, take it seriously. But then also to the larger scope of the solution, which is stay true to what you want to do. So if someone told me, hey, you need to do more environments, but I want to be a character artist, I won't take it like, well, that guy is not taking me seriously. It just means that perhaps my characters are not as convincing as I was hoping them to be. And so I was like, okay, I need to refine more and more my characters, so people will stop suggesting that I need more diversity in my portfolio. You know,
Mhm.
and if someone says that I need to work on this or that that is not character related, I just will kind of reaffirm that I just need to make better character designs, so people will start taking my portfolio seriously. You know,
Mhm.
and let me give you a good example of someone you take seriously. So do you see what I'm looking at? This artwork done by Vitaly Bulgarov.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine half of the kinds of criticism that you may have gotten happen to this guy?
Mm.
It wouldn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Why not?
Because he's, I don't know, he had the focus.
Well, no, just, it's really simple. Why wouldn't people give him hardcore critiques that you probably have gotten?
Because, like, he's really good,
Yeah,
obviously, at what he
yeah,
does.
yeah. And it's actually that simple. That's what I'm trying to make a point of. You understand me? Like, it is going to be, you're going to be hard pressed to tell Vitaly, like, you got a lot of good mechs, but no, man, like, no one's going to do that, right? Now, if Vitaly came to me and asked for a critique, I said, I can't give you one because you're better than me, right? But if he said to me, I really want to get better at environments, then it's different. You understand? Or characters
Yeah.
specifically. Characters, if he came to me and said, I want to be better at characters, okay? That's different.
Mhm.
Then I can be like, oh, okay, I can see what I can give you some advice on. But I would trust that the advice I would give him, he would take very seriously and he'll make it happen, you know?
Mhm.
So you have to understand when people give you advice, they might not even think that you're taking it seriously and that you won't even make it happen. You understand? And
Mhm.
and sometimes when you show someone your portfolio, if you yourself are also indecisive, then it warrants less of a very focused critique. You get my point?
Yeah.
Like it's on you as well to just show what you want to do so that people will give you critiques on how to improve that. And if they can't or they don't or they're indirect by it, then just say, okay, I get it. And what I usually try to give advice on this too is like, there's a phrase in the States, I'm not sure if you've heard this, it's pretty common, which is, you know, like, can I give you my 2 cents? It's basically, like, can I give you some of my advice, right?
Mhm.
Like, can I give you some advice? It's another way of saying that. Hey, do you mind if I give you my 2 cents? And I take that phrase and say uh, something along the lines of, I take everybody's 2 cents, and that's why I'm filthy rich of knowledge. You get it?
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
And that's including the ones that I don't think are as useful. I still listen to them. Like, for instance, my wife one time was looking at my artwork, and she was just like, why did you choose green? And I was like, what? I thought it was such a bizarre, out like left field criticism. And then I was like, yeah, why did I choose green? I thought about it. I was like, sweetheart, I chose it because it's complimentary and all this stuff, right? I went into like all this artsy fartsy kind of rebuttal. But I thought like maybe I'm just being pretentious. It's like maybe it's not a genuine answer. So then I was like, yeah, why did I actually choose green? Is it valid to just say I chose it for um, uh, color theory reasons? Because as far as she could tell, it didn't matter to her. Like my sense of color theory was lost on her, right?
Mhm.
And that's what made me start to consider that perhaps there's another level to design that doesn't involve the artist, which is entirely true. It seems bizarre, like what? Like, the artist is involved? Like no, like we get in our own way. Is what I'm trying to get at. We get so caught up in what we think is dope, we forget that most of what we put out for people or for people who know nothing about art. You know?
Yeah.
See, my brand works really well because I make things that people can be interested in even if they know nothing about art. But I also have a level of proficiency so that it attracts people who are artists. You know, I know my brand. And if you're working for a video game company and you're working on the next Twilight movie, you have to know your brand. You got to know who you're making this for to make the best results. Make sense? And so taking
Yeah.
criticism, I highly recommend you guys take as much criticism as possible and you take everything seriously, but not literally. You know, not half the time. Sometimes you can take it literally, right? Like if I told you to work on your materials because your character's materials look like plastic, that's a fair criticism, right? That's something you can work with. That's like a literal advice that you can take with you when you go home, you know?
Yeah.
But if someone says that you need more oomph, you know, that's kind of a weird critique, or like your work needs to be more, you just got to have more pizzazz, or whatever, like just use words that don't exist and has like no, it's like really, like that kind of critiques could happen, right?
Yeah.
Instead of necessarily critiquing the critiquer, just ask yourself, why did they even make that suggestion? What did they truly mean by that? And ask in an earnest way. Don't ask in a um, condescending way. You know, like this person doesn't know what they're talking about, because that's going to be your biggest mistake. Okay, like they
Okay.
actually might not know what they're talking about, but it'll be better for you to learn what they're talking about. You know, and
Okay.
a good example of this kind of neglect and how it's detrimental, you could apply it to teaching, right? So when I used to teach, there is this idea that I used to kind of live around, which is that if you that like there's it's the student's responsibility to do the work, and basically if they don't do it, they're just pretty much lazy, right? And that's how a lot
Uh-huh.
of teachers kind of have this mentality, and it's actually um, I think there's a little bit of truth behind it for sure, but it is also uh, interesting to think about it in a different way, which is this, which is, wouldn't you think that students who are already motivated and already passionate, right, who are already committed to their growth, that those are the easier students to teach, right? You would agree with that.
Mhm.
So wouldn't that contribute a lot of value then to the teacher if the teacher can somehow make the students who are quote unquote lazy not lazy anymore? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So when you call a student lazy as a teacher, that actually might be a teacher's excuse. Do you understand?
Oh, okay.
And my point of why I gave this reference is like, just you got to think about it from every angle to come up with some more rational conclusions. You
That makes
understand?
sense. Yeah.
And so it's easy to say, well, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. That's what I'm trying to get at. But that could be your excuse as an artist to not take their feedback seriously. You understand?
Yeah.
Now, that when that
Definitely.
revelation hit me as a teacher, for instance, it was because I lost a few students to my hardcore criticism and overtly criticizing their work ethic. Like I told you, if I see an instance of low work ethic, I won't attack you as you're lazy. I'll try to focus on why you procrastinated in the first place. Because if I could fix that, then you're on your way to become a badass. You know? And that is more contributed to me as a good teacher, less of you as a good student. What will make you a good student is if you just listen. Okay? Your job is to
Um.
take my advice seriously and do your best. But if I can find
True.
ways to get people to work, then that's great. That's my job. And so, getting back to kind of your question again, my point is just always think about it from as many points of views as possible before you just have any kind of um, thought of what you think it is. And my specific criticisms and critiques is what I just told you, right? It's trust that most people do have some insight into what they're trying to say to you, but some people might not, and you have to be aware of that as well. But just take it seriously and just say, well, how could I convince this person that I believe didn't have a strong argument? How could I find a way to make them still convinced? You know,
Okay. Yeah.
without
Yeah.
sacrificing my own like integrity. And sometimes the answer
Um.
is you can't do that at all. And that's totally fine. That happens too. But as long as you make an effort, that's all that matters.
And like, will you like after becoming more familiarized with our work, like, would you be able to give us like more of an idea of what our strengths and weaknesses are from
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
professional point of view?
Usually at the end, some people want to do portfolio reviews. So if you want to do that, you're welcome to do that. But I usually like to do that at the end. I don't want any preconceived notions usually.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, was it helpful?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. I'll take on one or two more questions and then we'll roll out. We're getting close to 11. Thanks for hanging in there, guys.
I have a one question.
안녕하세요.
So I wonder, is there a difference between a movie design and a game design?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the obvious answer is yes.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and the reason why is because film design is mostly realistic, and game design doesn't necessarily have to be. Now, is there realistic games? Yeah, but a lot of times video games are designed with the idea that characters and um, characters and environments are going to be interacted with from multiple different angles, you know?
Yeah.
And so there goes a lot. There's more to designing something that involves that ideas, like those ideals, than like something that's static and can be filmed and then you can just kind of fake a lot of it, you know?
Uh-huh.
So there's
Yeah.
so film design sometimes is really quick. Like they have quick turnarounds because a lot of times they understand that, and plus they want to there's just topical reasons too, because sometimes there's like a hot topic that people are really into, and if they can kind of like be part of that market before people lose interest in it, that's another way for them to make money. So that's true for video games too, but the thing about video games is that the audience who really love video games are pretty devoted, you know, and they're always looking to play like the next video game. That's just kind of how it is. But are those differences like really crazy when it comes to being a concept artist, for instance? Like, are they tremendously different for like you and I? Not really. You know, like it's still the same. It's just like pacing. It's just how much faster can you do this versus that.
Yeah. And in our assignment, we have a huge silhouette, very crazy silhouette, has very crazy silhouette, but some film concept that I saw is not much too big, has big silhouettes, so I'm a little bit confused about that.
Yeah, you can say that. There's definitely examples that you just said, but then there's also examples that support, right? Like Star Wars.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's like one of the largest franchises in the universe of franchises.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the Marvel movies, every Chinese movie that has tremendous amounts of special effects in it. Okay.
Okay.
So like if you're thinking contemporary history or contemporary films, like films that take place now or films that take place in the past with like contemporary history, then the silhouettes are not going to be as crazy. You're right.
Yeah.
But if you look at Avatar, the movie, if you look at
Yeah.
Star Wars, you look at the new one that's coming out of Valerian, I think it's called. If you look at Fifth Element, same director. If you can just name just as many movies that have absurd amounts of detail and silhouettes. Transformers, one of the largest movie franchises for kids these days, for teenage boys specifically, right? And men my age who used to love Transformers. Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers just came out. I'm gonna watch that today with my kids. I mean, like it's the problem. Like I said, is that I mentioned earlier to a student before, right? Is like try to find reasons why you should do something, why you can do something. Avoid the like. It's almost always easy. It's easy to just be like point out one example and say, look, this movie is like not pushing silhouettes, so why should I do it? And I'm like,
Mhm.
But what about all the hundreds that do? Like it's very convenient, isn't it, to just ignore all the other great examples? And it's almost
Mhm.
true for almost everything. Like very rarely will you have uh, like an absolute truth or one single solution. For instance, me and my friends were out last night, and one of my good friends and I, we had a really, really friendly debate about the Muslim state, right? And it's pretty tense
Mhm.
now because of what's going on here in the States. And I'm a big defender, right? But
Mhm.
I'm not extreme left. I'm actually right in the middle. I'm an independent. I look at rationale and logic, you know, and
Yeah.
statistics. So he brought up statistics. He's like, "You're a numbers guy." And I'm like, "I am," because statistics are more reliable than people's opinions. Okay. And he's like, "Well, did you know like X amount of people caused X amount of terrorism acts, and it's more than any other religion in the world, right?"
Mm.
And I said to
Yeah.
him, "Yeah, I'm sure this is a strong argument that you use, and I'm not actually disputing that. I actually agree that there is a high number that is factually true, you know."
Mhm.
But I explained to him, but to assume that because it's so high and it's the highest amongst other religions, that it is an epidemic, is that is it a problem that the whole world needs to overreact or overextend is what I disagree with, right?
Mhm.
And it's because he was so focused on that. He was like, "This, I got him." It was the silver bullet. He felt like, right? But I tried to explain. I was like, "But you know, there's a lot of Muslims. You understand that? And and ISIS, I believe, is getting close to 100,000, which is a lot of terrorist radicals, right? That's a lot. But
Yeah.
out of 1.7 billion is a drop in a bucket, you know?" And I said, that's 80,000 or 100,000 too many. I agree, right? And all those attacks that you refer to, I agree, are pretty goddamn terrible,
Mhm.
you know? But I was like, but don't
Yeah.
be naive, is because there's another terrorist group that we don't talk about very often here in home in America, which is the white supremacists, who are highly Christian. They use a lot of their belief systems from old school Christian ideals. And he's, well, that doesn't count because we denounce them as Christians. And I was like, point in case, you know? And I said to
Mhm.
him, you know what the underlining effect to violent behavior in humans in general? There's one thing that is consistent. It's not necessarily religion, because some of my friends will say, my overtly atheist friends, and because I'm an atheist, but I'm not an atheist that goes out of my way to tell my Christian friends to stop being Christians, right?
Mhm.
But I explain to them, you know, like for instance, people say religion is like a huge cause and effect to war, and I said no, it's not actually. There's one that's very clear and it's very consistent in almost every nation, regardless of religion, regardless of government, and it is very simple and it is consistent, and it is poverty and lack of education. Those two things cause crime and hate and gangs and warfare, right? And I explained to them, like, how do you think these extremists became extremists? You know? Because if you think that one day they woke up and they said, you know what? I was reading the Quran and I just saw that we should be killing Americans. Like, this is the thing we should be doing. I was like, or does it sound more realistic that you're living in a war-torn country or parts of your country don't give a F about you? My kids are here. I just was to cuss, but my kids are. And they don't care about you at all. And you're just like, I need to get out of here. And you're trying to get out. And before you could get out, a drone strike from Obama kills half your family because they were trying to hit one extremist person. And they got him. at the cost of taking other lives. And unfortunately, those lives was your family. So you're telling me that that person who was already fighting for their life and trying to survive, all of a sudden has no rational reason to be an extreme radical? Like, this is how they are born. This is how they're created in every nation, in every walk of life. And it doesn't have to be a drone strike. It could be uh, a natural devastation. Think like what happened in Haiti, right? They were already a poor country, and then they had the most tremendous um, uh, catastrophe happen to their country, right? And then crime went up because people are living in the streets. They're poor. They're trying to survive, you know. And luckily, there was no ideological belief system for them to back around to try to say this is what's going to solve our problems. Our problems are around this. And when you start putting resources behind the origin to why people are involved in other people's affairs, it gets even worse, right? And I'm trying to explain this to them because, and what I'm trying to make a point of, like why I kind of went there specifically to political, well, this is because this is the reason why a lot of people get stuck in their ways. And as an artist, you know, that is the greatest weapon to fight you to improve your work. You understand me?
Mm, yeah,
If
I
you
got it.
if you feel that, hey, well, film doesn't necessarily, you know, this is short-sightedness, and this can
Mm,
compoundly affect everything you do in your life. And if you kind of start to say, well, is there a possibility that I am wrong, right?
yeah.
And you should always go on the caution that you're most likely wrong, especially if
Mm-hmm.
you have no research in it. If you haven't spent any time in it, just assume that you're wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and then or if you think that you're right, then prove it.
Yeah.
You know. And
Yeah.
so this is why I'm a big defender of like for specifically for like you know the Muslim state, because historically speaking, discrimination and generalization has always historically been inaccurate. You know, of any race, of any kind, in any country and society, has mostly been, and I mean mostly when you generalize at large scales. Okay, very rarely could there have been some truth to generalizations. For instance, like when Nazi Germany was happening, right? Like that was pretty bad, but that's because we weren't generalizing based off of assumptions. We were generalizing by real action, you know? And my point is that like when you're trying to come to conclusions, guys, on your own, like about like how to improve and like, well, I've seen examples of work that are super sketchy. So why should I refine my artwork? I was like, well, what about the work that's not super sketchy? Oh wait, do you notice that there's a consistent pattern that some of the best artists who potentially do these super sketchy paintings are also really good at finishing their paintings? You know, you only looked at the most surface basic information that was available, the easiest information that was accessible to you, and then that allowed you to have a prejudgment. And this is like one of the greatest pitfalls uh, that we have as a species is our short-sightedness. And we
Yeah.
all have
Okay.
it, including myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I understand.
I mean, Korea just, which is really cool, by the way. Korea, like, they were able to kind of dethrone their president, right? Because they're just like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
there's some
Yeah,
shenanigans
we did
going on.
it.
Yeah, it's good, man. It demonstrates that we're living in a more progressive world. You know, this type of
Yeah.
stuff is not allowed anymore. We're really, and like even in America, we're starting to like come to the idea, like even the most advocate of Trump supporters are starting to realize that he is a joke. You know,
Yeah.
it was obvious
Trump
to the
is
most
bad.
of us. Yeah, it was obvious to most
Yeah.
of us, but some of these people really believed that he was going to make some positive change. But now that they could see that he is a complete liar, even though everyone else saying like, dude, he's like, you gotta see that he's like constantly lying, or like, I don't know, like that's just what politicians do. It's like, no, dude, like politicians lie, yeah, sure, but never at this level. You know, like you can't you can't take a person seriously if they're making everybody happy. They say you get what you want, you get what you want, and you get what you want. Like I'm gonna ban the Muslims. They're like, oh, what? But isn't that pretty extreme? Not the bad ones, or not the good ones, though. Not the good ones. Like the good ones, you guys are still good. They're like, wait, what does that mean? How do you know? Like, like everybody gets health care. Awesome. And everyone gets tax breaks. Wait, then how are we going to pay for our health care if it's for everybody? Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. I'm Trump. And it's like, it's like you got to start saying, wait a minute. And these people are starting to say, oh, wait a minute. And a lot of it has to do with because they're becoming educated, right? And so use that as your main platform. Education is super powerful. Dude, what my Photoshop is like starting to slow down a lot. I'm not sure why. But I'm just going to go ahead and continue painting. Because my Photoshop is sick of the politics. He's like, shut up already. Yes, Trump. Net neutrality is already in place. Oh no. Anyway, I'll take one last question.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so I have some couple companies I need to apply for job at there. So, do you think that it's required to have their theme in my portfolio?
It's not required, but it's highly recommended. Okay. And I'll explain in just a second. I'm just going to restart Photoshop so I can actually paint this stuff. It's highly recommended. And for obvious reasons, right? Like think of it from the point of view of the employer. Like if I want to bring somebody onto my team and we draw pink pony unicorns, okay?
Mhm.
And you don't have pink pony unicorns in your portfolio, it's most likely we're not going to hire you, right? But if you had pink pony unicorns, okay, great. You passed the first test. You have at least the subject matter, right? So the next question would be, is it at the level of quality? And quality is relative. Quality means like, does it match the style? Does it match the painting style? Or does it match the workflow, or the aesthetic? Or is it close enough, that we can just nudge you a little bit to the left or to the right,
Mhm.
Um, if that second question is answered, yeah, like that person is like right on the money on that point of view, then it's like, yeah, bring them in. And then the third question that interview is make sure you're not crazy, right? Like a crazy person. Okay. That's what the phone interview is and the physical interview is for. Make sense? And so what I'm trying to make a point of is that you have to think about it like if the employer feels that they have to train you or you in your heart know like if this will take you some time to really adjust to,
Mhm.
then it's going to be harder for them to take you on, right?
I see.
Because like why, like think it from your point of view. Like would you just hire an artist that is reasonably good in like a whole different field, right? But like I said, like let's say you're making characters for Transformers and this person draws pink cutie unicorns, but they're really good though. They're painted really good, you know?
Mm.
But you're working on Transformers 17 or whatever, and you have to hire a new artist. You're not going to hire that artist, not because they're not good, it's because they're not relevant to your needs.
Mhm.
Make sense?
Mhm.
And
Makes sense.
it's like, okay, we can bring this person on. I follow this person's art. Like, dude, I love him. He's a nice guy or girl. Like, I met him and it's like great, you know. And your boss is like, you know what? Okay, let's give him a shot. See what he got or she got. You know.
I see. So
That's
there's
that's
some
that's
kind
that's
of
gonna
change.
yeah, that's gonna cost money for them to have that person then adapt,
Yeah.
which could happen. But then it's a gamble because then you're gambling, right? Because then what if they don't ever? Like it takes years and they still don't. And like I believe in you, bro. I think you got it. Like give you another year in training and you'll get there. And another
Mhm.
thing is there's a reason why that person doesn't have that stuff in their portfolio in the first place. Probably because they're just not interested in it. Right? That's why I always make a strong comment about being true to yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Because if you eventually do get work, you want work that is catered to the kinds of needs that you generally just are into. Like I love Uncharted. Right? Uncharted is one of the greatest game franchises I've ever played or experienced in my life. Okay?
Mhm.
but I don't think I would like working on it because I don't want to paint khakis.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
I think I'm qualified too. I think I could, if I applied, they would probably hire me, even if I didn't have any realistic people. But I just know they just do more realistic stuff, contemporary realism, that I'm not a big fan of, like Call of Duty and all that stuff, right? Like on a visual level, not on like a level that I don't think they're good games or anything, right? But here's the flip: Fallout, right? The Fallout franchise.
Yeah.
I hate that game. I think it's boring. I get so bored playing that game. But if BioWare or Bethesda decided to, hey, we're working on um, the new Fallout, and we want to bring you on to draw all the mutants, right?
Yeah.
I would be excited, even though I'm
Gotcha.
not a fan of their game. You know,
Mhm.
like this right here could be something I could possibly go into Fallout. You know, I didn't even
Yeah.
have that intention. I just started drawing something weird.
Mhm.
And so, so to answer your question, like, is it important to have something of value to the employer? Absolutely. But the better question you should ask is that something you want to do, though?
Yeah.
You know, and
So
if the answer is no, then don't apply there. Or if you apply
yeah.
there and they say no to you, don't get upset. You know,
Yeah.
and if they hire you and they make you pay something that you don't like, then again, don't get upset. You made your bed, you lay in it, right? And
Yeah.
so if I get it, like people have different circumstances, like they got to make money somehow, so they'll do whatever for the time being, but make that a very clear statement in your own psyche, because people will say that, and then they get the jobs, and then they don't make any new portfolio pieces, and all the new portfolio pieces that they do make are the things that they don't like,
Mhm.
and that's a trap that I try to avoid for all of you guys.
Yeah. Well, I asked that question actually because I've noticed some artists and big company, entertainment company or gaming companies
Hmm.
uh, working on on some kind of games and their portfolio some the- mm, how should I say um they don't have that kind of feel of what they are already working in that game.
It's probably because they don't like doing it, and they just are making portfolios to try to get out. You might be like
Uh,
seeing, you might be seeing the people trying to have an escape plan, yeah.
yeah.
And then the ones that have those jobs and have a portfolio that's not, yeah, I don't know. That happens. Like, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. You asked if
Mhm.
it's better or not, and I said yes, of course it's better. But doesn't mean that they won't hire you if you don't have it. No, not at all.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
It's
like totally people can hire me to work on Pixar. I would be shocked. I mean, why? You know, I would be very curious to why the Pixar people called me up. You know,
yeah.
like like
No,
John
that kind
Lasseter
of
is like, we're really looking to change our genre, and I'm like, oh, okay. You know,
yeah. I
maybe
mean,
not.
it's like
Maybe they're just like, we see the story. We know you have story in you, and this tumor monster thingy that you drew, like we see it. You know, you don't see it, but we can see it. And I'm like, all right.
yeah.
And
Yeah. You mean it's like if you got what I mean, like a cover letter. If you got something they have in their themes or something.
yeah, there's all sorts of variables, right? Like if you know people, if you did one piece like a while ago that does actually fit in there,
Mhm.
yeah, you know, there's all
Yeah.
kinds of things that could contribute to why you get a job. But if you want to know the few things that will help you guys get those jobs, it's really as simple: having great work and making good friends. You know, those are like the biggest contributors. Everything else is just subtle.
Definitely.
Okay, like the more people you know and you make friends with in your life in this industry, the better your chances are than just having work that's applied to these certain jobs. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and end the class. Good questions, guys. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for answering.
Yep, good questions. Hope you guys learned from the answers. Um, with that being said, you guys are going to go into the weekend, so use the time to chat with each other. Use Discord, try to work together on getting better, like get Google Hangouts going, get Discord chats going. Talk to one another is really powerful. Skype is a really good use of your time as well. I see a lot of you guys chat often. This is nice, but at the same time, work. Like I used to sit down with my friends. We just sit down and we would just talk and talk, and it was so much fun. And we'd just paint and talk and paint and talk. But we'd get a lot of work done because we were just kind of working and then talking. And sometimes we'll just have our headphones and just work, but in proximity of one another. And it's something nice about doing that. So if you feel like, you want to surround yourself with like-minded people, the Discord's built for that. So with that, have a good weekend. Talk to you guys later. And then I'll see you guys next week. Good luck.
Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.